a great day because College Press Box is back, and we have a lot to unpack for y'all today. Texas OU weekend was a hectic game. MLB divisional teams are turning heads in their divisional series, and we are going to preview the NHL opening day tomorrow. All this and more coming up on College Press Box.
Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Debanny Cerda, and he's Ikey Kohler. We have a great show for you guys today.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Deb. Today's show is brought to you by Cap Metro, Austin's transit system. We connect you to work, school, play, and everywhere in between. Plan your ride to this weekend's game at capmetro.org. And let's just dive right into it. This week's Red River Rivalry week. The number 3 ranked Longhorns face the number 12 ranked Sooners, and this is the third time both teams have been ranked and undefeated in the series' long history, and it proved to be a game like no other. Now here we go. We start off after an interception by Quinn Ewers. Dylan Gabriels takes off for the touchdown. He had 113 rushing yards on the game, jumping out to an early lead. Sooners up 7-0. Now, after a fumble by J.T. Sanders, a blocked punt by this Longhorn special teams evens up the game. It was a strange first 6 minutes, but despite 2 turnovers, a tie football game at the Cotton Bowl. Now, 10-7 Sooners. Quinn finds Gunnar Helm for his first touchdown as a Longhorn to go up 14-10, and we're just barely heading into the second quarter. Now the Sooners, a 2-yard rushing touchdown. Tyree Walker had 2 on the day. That was his first one to go up. Now Texas with a field goal. This is a good drive by the Sooners. Walker again bounces off the defenders, which would set up a Sooners field goal to end the half. Now fast forward to the third. Walker with his second rushing touchdown of the game to go up 10 points. The Sooners were up 10. Quinn Ewers here. This was a pivotal play. Peyton Bowen laying the boom on Quinn, and things started to look bleak for the Longhorns. Sooners up 10 points, 7 minutes to go in the third. It was a big hit. Now Quinn finds Jordan Whittington, takes it to the 1-yard line, all for Texas to not be able to punch it in on 4 straight downs. But Texas got the ball back, and here goes Jonathan Brooks, 28 yards for the touchdown. Boom, tie ball game, 6 minutes left. Jonathan Brooks, Bert Auburn, I call him Big Time Bert, puts it through the uprights, gives Texas a lead with 1:18. Just pure mayhem, but Dylan Gabriel wasn't done. Here he was, second and goal to Nick Anderson, 75 yards. It took them 1:15 seconds. Pandemonium ensues at the Red River Rivalry.
The Red River Rivalry is never short of any drama. Texas and Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl, in one of the most iconic scenes in all of college football. This year, for the 119th time, and last time as members of the Big 12 Conference. Oklahoma coming in with a chip on their shoulder after losing 49-0 in year 1 under Brent Venables, and Dylan Gabriel had a bigger chip on his shoulder. After being unable to play last season and watching from the sidelines, he scores the Sooners' first points against the Longhorns in 2 years. But Texas answered right back, as Keaton Crawford blocked a punt in the end zone, and freshman Malik Muhammad scooped it up to even things up at 7 apiece, and get the Longhorn faithful right back into the ballgame, lighting up the burnt orange half of the stands. Gunnar Helm got active too. With Jatavian Sanders injured and limited in this game, the tight end position relied on Helm, who scored his first career touchdown in one of the biggest games of his life. And then from there, the offensive dramatic battle pursued. Dylan Gabriel found the deep ball to Jalil Farouk, as the Sooners have done so well this season. But Texas has been okay at it too, with Quinn Ewers flipping one over the middle of the field to a wide-open Xavier Worthy. Back and forth they went, as these two teams usually do. And then in the fourth quarter, Jonathan Brooks ties things up, 27 apiece after this long touchdown run. And then Bert Auburn knocks in a field goal to put the Longhorns up 30-27 with just over a minute to go. Texas fans breathed a sigh of relief as they finally took back the lead. But Oklahoma felt no pressure as Dylan Gabriel drove the Sooners down the field and threw the game-winning touchdown pass to wide receiver Nick Anderson in the corner of the end zone. After the game, when asked about whether or not they would see the Sooners in the Big 12 championship game, Texas head football coach Steve Sarkisian remained focused on the games left on the schedule, but confident in his team's ability to compete for a championship.
Well, I expect us to get back on the horse. We got a locker room full of competitors. This is a tight-knit group. I'm super proud of them for what they bring every single day. I was proud of them today. And so we'll go one game at a time. I think this locker room is full of champions, and our goal is to go win a championship this year. So we got to go handle our business.
This game was very simple towards the end. Oklahoma just wanted it more within those final 2 minutes. They drive down the field thanks to Dylan Gabriel moving the ball around very efficiently and get a game-winning touchdown in the back of the end zone to Nick Anderson. Oklahoma defeats Texas A&M, their first loss of the season. The Longhorns go back to the drawing board this week for the bye, and then will travel to Houston to take on the new Big 12 opponent Cougars as the Longhorns continue their final run through the Big 12 Conference, aiming for a rematch with the Sooners in a Big 12 championship game come December. For TSTV Sports, I'm Tommy Yarrish.
While there were so many upsets in college football, like Miami not taking a knee and Louisville with the upset, let's take a look at how Sunday went in the NFL. Joining us to talk pro football is our NFL analyst, Adam Vela. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You know, Adam, we're now in 5 weeks into the NFL season in the 2023. We are getting a look at how pretty much the teams, all the 32 teams, how are by now. It's been hectic and very unpredictable and record-breaking starts for everyone for this season. But my question for you is going to be, who has been the most disappointing team so far?
You know, I think the clear answer here is probably the Bengals. You know, after the 2 past seasons, we all expected the Bengals to be competing with the Bills and Chiefs every year for the AFC crown. And nothing has really seemed to have gone their way this year. And, you know, I get that Joe Burrow is injured, but they're already facing an uphill climb in a tough AFC North division with a 2-3 record. And I get that Joe Burrow's having an abysmal year, tossing just 5 touchdowns in 5 games, and his passer rating is the lowest it's ever been in his career. But he did have a bounce-back game yesterday versus the Rams with 317 yards and 3 touchdowns. I hope that he can turn it around because I speak for all of us that when I say that we need another Chiefs-Bengals playoff matchup in the second round. Okay, well, speaking about the second round, I know this team is near and dear to a lot of our hearts. You know what I'm saying? But not mine, so I have no problem calling it what it is. The Dallas Cowboys straight up stunk it up yesterday against a real contender in the San Francisco 49ers. Dak Prescott threw 3 interceptions and everything looked bad for Dallas. And now the Cowboys are looking at a 3-2 start to the 2023 campaign and are unlikely to replicate a successful 12-5 2022 campaign due to a tough remaining schedule. You see, Deb, here's the thing about the Cowboys. They're almost always guaranteed to produce good squads year after year, but when it comes to the playoffs, they keep disappointing us. Dak Prescott is a good, not a great quarterback, and the offense outside of CeeDee Lamb looks downright abominable and horrendous against real teams. And what is a stacked NFC? I'm sorry about that. And what is a stacked NFC with a team such as the 49ers, Lions, and yes, even the Eagles? The Cowboys are probably the 4th best team. So if I were a Cowboys fan, I know there's a couple of y'all in the studio here today. You might want to cover your ears for this one. I would expect a decent regular season, probably somewhere around 11 wins, and yet another second-round exit this year. But if there is one thing that Cowboys fans can be happy about, it's that they won't have to run into Aaron Rodgers this year because he tore his Achilles. But speaking of Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, has more ownership in the Cowboys than Jerry Jones himself, in my opinion, the Jets are my final most disappointing team. And I didn't really understand it, but they had a lot of Super Bowl aspirations after signing former Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers. But unfortunately, like I said earlier, his Achilles was brutally snapped in half in the first play of the game. I was never one to buy into this hope, but you got to feel bad for Jets fans because, I mean, they've just been bottom feeding since before I was born, to be honest with you. All of this pressure and expectations are now on the shoulders of Zach Wilson, and like you guys know, I'm the biggest Zach Wilson fan. You know, I've defended him, and I don't really think he's gotten a fair shake in the NFL, but here it is. I think this is his chance. You know, he's got an elite defense, great weapons, solid O-line. I think he's capable of leading the Jets to the playoffs, but I think that's about it. No, the Jets are probably not going to win the Super Bowl. Sorry to disappoint you Jets fans out there. Not without Aaron Rodgers. I just want to make it clear that this answer is not about the play of the Jets. I think they're a solid team, but it's of the hype and the predictions that the fans and the media created for them. It's almost a situation that's similar to the Cowboys.
Wow, Aaron, those were some definitely hot takes, but I have to agree with the Cowboys one. I will agree with that one. Now, let's switch the gears over real quick. We've discussed the most disappointing teams and obviously gave us 3. What are teams that have been surprising performances thus far, and which teams do you believe have the most impressive start this year at Week 5?
So, I mean, the obvious, answer to this question would be like the 49ers, Eagles, but the key word is surprising. Who wants to hear about those teams? Honestly, it's all boring in my opinion. We've expected that from them coming into the year. They're undefeated. What's surprising to me is the culture shift that the Houston Texans have displayed, who have already almost matched their win total from last year. They found their guy in April in C.J. Stroud, who I always thought was a better quarterback than Bryce Young. And C.J.'s proved himself in Houston so far this season, throwing for 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, and more importantly, no interceptions. I love the culture that head coach DeMeco Ryans is building in Houston. And let's be honest, this franchise hasn't necessarily had good luck with, J.J. Watt's injuries, that whole Deshaun Watson debacle, and Bill O'Brien. But it seems like their future is bright, at least for now. They found their head coach. They found their QB. They have cornerstones on defense like Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson, and I think the sky's the limit for the Texans. And honestly, they could probably even compete for an AFC South crown this year because that division has a new winner, it seems like, every year. Now let's go to the NFC North, where the Detroit Lions have started off 4-1. Yes, you guys heard that right. I couldn't believe it myself, but, it's real. It's not a fake stat. Jared Goff is a legitimate quarterback, and Dan Campbell is building a great culture in Detroit, and it's paid off. They are the first in the NFC North, which has been dominated by the Cheeseheads for a long time. The city of Detroit finally has something to look forward to besides the good old-fashioned Thanksgiving whooping nearly every year. I got the Lions making the playoffs this year. Finally, shout out to Goose, man. I hope you're feeling better. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be my last team. The most cursed team in the NFL, it looks like, blowing leads left and right. But it finally looks like they have a bright future. The offense looks immaculate with pieces such as Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London, all with the exception of the QB. I've never been a Desmond Ridder fan since the beginning. All these guys on offense could be superstars one day, and call me crazy, but I think Bijan probably might already be one. No bias, I promise you. I expect them to win a weak NFC South this year. The Bucs are 3-1 right now, but that's not going to last, let's be honest. It's only going to go up from here, to be honest. The defense leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion, but let's give these, offensive pieces, these young players, a couple years together, a new quarterback, most importantly, and we could find this team taking a similar rise as the Bengals did 2 years ago, in my opinion.
Aaron, I do believe Houston is definitely changing the culture in there, and as a Houstonian, I'm very proud of that answer. And you know what? Shout out to Goose, because the Falcons, they found Bijan, and that was the best move they could have made. Behind every great team, we have good players. And in the NFL, there's a fair share of great players, but only a few of them can be the most valuable player at the end of the year. Who would be your early MVP candidate at this point of the season?
Well, listen, I know that Patrick Mahomes is the MVP until someone dethrones him, and, he'll likely be the most valuable player for the foreseeable future, even if he doesn't win the award every year. It's kind of like LeBron in the 2010s, Jordan in the 90s. They were the most valuable player, but they didn't win the award every year necessarily. But to be honest, I don't see the Chiefs winning the championship this year. They just don't look the same. And I just don't think Mahomes will put up the MVP numbers we've been used to seeing from him. And you know what? I don't really blame him. When his receiving core consists of, a half-open bag of potato chips, a pair of socks, and, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, how could I forget about him? I bet he misses Tyreek Hill, and I bet that keeps him up at night, honestly. But with that being said, the QB who's now throwing to Tyreek Hill is definitely in the MVP conversation. Tua, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, has been electric this year and has led what has arguably been the most explosive offense in all of football. He's tossed 11 touchdowns in 5 games while completing an astounding 72% of his passes. A lot of it has to do with his weapons in Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devin, I don't know how to say, Eshane, and apparently top 5 receiver Chase Claypool. They just traded for him, obviously. So when we look at Tua, we're looking at a guy that when he's healthy, he's going to keep putting up the same numbers every game. So definitely keep an eye on the Dolphins. They could very sneakily find themselves playing in Vegas come February if the offense keeps putting up insane numbers. And, speaking about insane numbers, how does 42-10 sound? You Cowboys fans thought I was done with you. It's not over yet. The best, you have to consider the best QB on the best team in the league, and that's Brock Purdy. He's absolutely obliterated an elite Cowboys defense yesterday. On the season, he's completed 72% of his passes and for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns and no picks. That's the most important aspect, in my opinion. He's not the flashiest player in the world, but he gets things done. He has done that since Iowa State. It reminds me of a certain guy in New England, which, by the way, we all used to call him a system quarterback as well. Look where that ended up. But let's be honest. Who says the MVP is a QB exclusive award? Well, the voters, I know. But let's be honest. The best player in the league right now, the most dominant, is T.J. Watt. He has 8 sacks through 5 games, and I think he wants that Michael Strahan record this year. He's been just downright unblockable this year, just like how his brother was all those years ago for the Texans. He's the face of the Steelers and the human embodiment of what that franchise stands for. Now, I know the last defensive MVP was Lawrence Taylor all the way back in 1986. I know our MLB analyst, Joe Duffey, in the studio remembers that like it was yesterday. But the Steelers have a respectable 11-win season. I'd say just give it to him because the QB play this year that we've seen from everybody, like Patrick Mahomes, if you have Brock Purdy in the QB MVP conversation, the QB play has been lackluster. I'd say just give it to T.J. Watt. He's the dominant. He's the best player on the Steelers, best player on the best defense in the league.
Wow, Arab, those were definitely some hot takes, but you know what? I'm always here for the Cowboy slander, and I do believe Tua does deserve it, especially after the rocky season he had last year. Always great to hear your analysis, even though sometimes they're a little hot to handle for some people. When we come back, College Press Box, our very own Joe Duffey will fill us in on Major League Baseball's postseason, so you don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. The 2023 MLB postseason is officially underway with some stunning upsets. To bring us up to date with what has transpired since last Tuesday is our very own Joseph Duffey. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thank you, Ike, for having me. So the wild card round features shocking first-round exits without a single series reaching a decisive Game 3. How was this even possible? Well, I'll say this, Ikey. The wild card round didn't have a single Game 3, which was quite the surprise. Let's start with the first team to move on, the Texas Rangers. It was the series of the young guns, Evan Carter and Josh Young. Carter became the first player to reach base in his first 6 postseason plate appearances. And for Young, he'd have 3 extra base hits in Game 2, only the 6th rookie to ever do that in MLB history. Another series would involve the Phillies, who would absolutely dominate the Miami Marlins, outscoring them 11-2 in the series with pitching efforts from Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. And then, of course, last week, we also got to see the Twins. Yes, the Twins, who would snap an 18-game postseason losing streak and eventually defeat the Blue Jays, clinching their first playoff series win in 21 years. Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray were excellent. And then finally, and most shockingly, the Arizona Diamondbacks swept the Brewers in Milwaukee after a Brew Crew bullpen collapse that led to Corbin Carroll slashing 4 for 7 with a 1.143 slugging percentage in 2 games. Plenty of people, including myself, looked silly after last week's series.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've ever heard of every team sweeping, in the MLB before.
That was crazy.
How about Josh Young? The Rangers get hot, and anything can happen.
Hot at the right time.
Hot at the right time.
Yeah.
Moving on. Since Saturday, there's been some compelling series just to watch in the division series round. So, what club would you say have been looking the best overall over the weekend, in your opinion?
Well, I have to start firstly with the Texas Rangers. This Rangers squad finished the season with a 40-41 record on the road. They would meet with Baltimore, the number 1 seed in the AL, with the 7th best pitching ERA, and the Rangers would leave Baltimore with a 2-0 series lead. Game 1 would be an absolute nail-biter, even with the shaky bullpen performance and 16 combined strikeouts in their lineup. But Game 2 would feature an offensive explosion, consisting of a Mitch Garver grand slam in the 3rd and 11 combined walks, 5 of them coming from Corey Seager. Seager was the first player to ever walk 5 times in a postseason game. Secondly, I have to talk about how impressed I am with the Philadelphia Phillies. On Saturday, Philadelphia would be the first team to shut out Atlanta at home this season. The Fighting Phils would only use 7 pitchers and only surrender 5 hits to the best offense in the game. Bryce Harper would also steal the show with a 2-for-2 day, including a 2-run homer in the 6th. With Philadelphia's stunning Game 1 upset against a divisional rival, I have to wonder if we are seeing a repeat of last season with the magical Phillies playoff run.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like they're clicking on all cylinders.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the rest, what you'll see the rest of the divisional series, What do you expect, for the rest of this week? That it's going to make for a good week of baseball.
It'll be really entertaining. I'm looking forward to it. But Ikey, I expect this Braves-Phillies matchup to go 5 games. These divisional rivals are too familiar with each other. I have a hard time believing that Atlanta can't bounce back somewhat after a disappointing Game 1. They're actually down as we speak, I believe, 4-0. However, I believe that Philadelphia has their number and that they will win Game 5 back in Atlanta after dominating the Braves in Games 3 and 4 in Philadelphia. As for Texas and Baltimore, I believe that the Rangers will move on in Arlington. I don't have much faith left in this Orioles pitching staff, but most of all, the Rangers are statistically a better team when they play at Globe Life Field. A nice fact to admire, though, is that Baltimore was tied for the most road wins in the Major League Baseball with 52. But I believe that Evaldi can get the job done in Game 3, preventing this series from going back to Baltimore. And so leading now to the D-backs, the Bats came alive against a team that has historically dominated them for the past 3 seasons. After an 11-2 thumping win in Dodger Stadium, I believe the Dodgers will bounce back with their bats. This is the time of the year that postseason legends like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman shine the very most. I trust the experience of LA more than this young Arizona team. And then finally, the Twins and Astros are heading to Minneapolis tied at 1. Yordan Alvarez hit 3 homers in 2 games, while Pablo Lopez pitched a 7-inning masterclass with 7 strikeouts and no runs given up in Game 2. Though Minnesota currently has the momentum heading to Minneapolis and are about to play their most important series in baseball in over 20 years, I still have the Astros moving on to the championship series. And so, like the Dodgers, I believe that the Astros will advance because of veteran leadership and postseason experience. Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Justin Verlander, you know all of them. They're still the defending champions in what has been recognized as a down year, even though they won the division title with 90 wins. Minnesota will put up a fight, but I still have Houston clinching in Game 4. And so I'm anticipating a nice weekend of baseball.
And a lot of experienced teams, the Braves, the Stros, the Dodgers, playing some teams that aren't traditionally there. So yeah, it'll be a good week.
Good week for Perry too, yeah.
Yeah, and so Joe, thanks for your in-depth analysis. It's always great having you on the show. And when we return on College Press Box, TJ Krilowicz will preview the NHL season. Opening day tomorrow. You will not want to miss it. Stay tuned. Be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Now joining us to preview the NHL season is TJ Krilowicz. TJ, welcome to the show. Now, I don't know anything about hockey, so please take it over.
Yeah, thank you, Debanny, of course, and congratulations on getting the last name right. I know it's hard the first time.
Sure.
I love to have the opportunity to talk some NHL on Press Box today, especially since the season starts on Tuesday this week. I know it never snows here in Austin, Texas, so there isn't much interest in the city, but I'm here to tell you that hockey is in such a great place. It's never been a better time to get interested in the game. You have one of the most electrifying sports tournaments in America, the Stanley Cup playoffs, that saw 2 teams that hadn't won a title yet last year in the finals. So you're starting to get better parity in the league, but at the same time, we're starting to see some really efficient teams that we haven't seen yet. The Boston Bruins last year set the NHL record for most wins in a season with 65. We won't talk about how they lost in the first round in embarrassing fashion, but hey, that brings up my point again of parity growing in the league. But what's so exciting about this league is that the younger players just keep getting better. And there's one name that has brought fear to every team except for the Chicago Blackhawks when they drafted him with the first pick of the offseason's draft. That's right, his name is Connor Bedard. And dare I say, Chicago could be back. Not only is Connor Bedard getting compared to some of the greatest players in recent history like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid, but Chicago added a lot of scoring depth to their team, such as Taylor Hall, Nick Fogliano, and Ryan Donato that helped with their best goal scorer, Andres Athanasiou. Try to say that 3 times in a row. Sadly for Chicago, since it's not likely Bedard will not become an MVP candidate in his first year, and the defense is still razor thin with only a few impactful players like Seth Jones, it'll be tough to get first in the Central Division. The Dallas Stars, another team in the Central, are always a team you need to look out for, and this team matches really well. Their young forward duo of Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz has gotten more and more dangerous with each year. You add their 39-year-old buddy Joe Pavelski, and that's one of the most dangerous power play teams in the league. They ranked 5th last year, and I expect them to be around there this year as well. Their defense is super strong with Miro Heiskanen and young player Thomas Harley, and don't forget about their anchor Jake Ottinger, who didn't have the best of playoffs last year, but still got them to the Western Conference Finals and held the opponents to 2.37 goals a game last year. but I do think last year's Central Division champions, the Colorado Avalanche, are the best team in the division. This team got hit hard with injuries, and they'll be without their captain Gabriel Landeskog for the year, but they got depth in the offseason to cover that with signings of Ross Colton and Ryan Johansson. Add in star defenseman Cal McCarr and star forward Nathan McKinnon, and you got a fast skating team that can put points on the board in a hurry. I expect them to win the division again and have a deep playoff run that they didn't get last year because some team called the Seattle Kraken eliminated them in the first round. The Kraken, they were a physical team that relied on its defense. Vance Dunn, who they re-signed long-term in the offseason, is great at getting the puck out of the zone and getting their forwards involved in the offensive zone. They added defensive man Brian Dumoulin, so expect the Kraken to be a gritty team that wins games and prevents good players from getting involved. But ultimately, the lack of a star goal scorer and a quality goaltender makes them not a strong candidate to win the Pacific Division. The Oilers, who could be seen as the opposite of the Kraken, are a team that has one of the best forward lines in NHL history. Last year's MVP, Connor McDavid, is one of the best players in NHL history, and his teammates Leon Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins joined him last year with 100-point seasons. But with the lack of playoff success and not addressing the defensive issues in the offseason, I can't put them over the defending champions, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And why the Las Vegas Knights are going to win the Pacific Division? Well, the goalie Aiden Hill, he was great for them in the playoffs last year. And they have countless players on their team. They just give immense value to a team. They got forwards you never want to let loose on a power play with Jack Eichel, Chandler Stevenson, Jonathan Marchessault, Mark Stone, and Ivan Barbashev. They got defensive men that could do just about anything, and Alex Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore. They should be favorites to win the West again, but with how tough the Western Conference is and how uncommon it is for teams to repeat in the NHL, I'm going with the Avalanche. Despite injuries, the team has too much star power and depth to not compete and win the West this year. So, now on the East side, I'm going to start with the Metropolitan Division. The New York Rangers tried to go all in last year with trading for forwards Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, but lost in the first round to the Devils. This team has got a dominant offense that had 5 players score over 20 goals in the season. The defense has Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren, and they have one of the best goalies in the league, Igor Sherskytin, who will have 2.48 goals per game last year. But they need to be prepared to face good teams in the division like their good old pals, the New Jersey Devils. Now, the Devils, they added Tyler Toffoli to a team that already has crazy depth, and Tyler Toffoli is a great offensive player. Brothers Jack and Luke Hughes are here to stay for a while, and they're going to dominate with their way of getting their teammates involved and scoring themselves. Expect this team to make another playoff run, but it'll be tough for them to win the division with the presence of the Carolina Hurricanes. This team has even better depth. It's what they're known for. And they don't have any weaknesses that can really be easy to exploit. Goalies Peter Kochetkov and Frederick Anderson are going to stop any teams from going on scoring spurts and can cover the net well during penalty kill situations. Sebastian Aho is still a dangerous, speedy goal scorer, and players like Marin Necas and Brett Burns give this team some grit and efficiency that very few teams have. Now, in the Atlantic Division, I mentioned the Boston Bruins in their dominant regular season last year. However, it's going to be much tougher for them to do what they did last year, and that's because they just had a really bad offseason. They lost future Hall of Fame center Patrice Bergeron and their second-line center David Krejci to retirement, and lost players like Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, and Connor Clifton. With the brutal offseason and the embarrassing loss to the Florida Panthers in the first round last year, I just don't see this team getting a good run in the playoffs. But really, anything is possible with goalie Linus Ullmark, who won the Vezina Trophy, a.k.a. the best goalie last year. Now, bringing it back to the Panthers. They sort of made a Cinderella run and somehow ended up in the Stanley Cup Finals last year. They had a quiet offseason, but I guess you could be pretty confident with the team after making the finals. Matthew Tkachuk, one of the MVP finalists, dominated in the playoffs and showed up in the right moments every single time. Carter Verhey and Alexander Barkov gave a lot of help with scoring depth last year as well. Goalie Sergei Bobrovsky, although he didn't have the best regular season last year, he showed how poised and great he could be in the playoffs last year and was a real good leader for them. Lastly, I'm going to end with the favorite to win the East, at least in my opinion. A team that hasn't done so since 1967. The Toronto Maple Leafs look really, really good. They could be considered the Dallas Cowboys in the NHL, so I'm here to say that this is their year. They've had like 6 or so years where they've been out in the first round, but they do have their big four with Austin Matthews, who won MVP in 2022. You also have Mitch Marner, you have William Nylander, and you have Morgan Rielly. Add in the offensive acquisitions of Max Domi and Tyler Pertuzzi, and you got a tough physical team that will wear you out all 60 minutes. I also expect goalie Joseph Wall to take a huge step this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this team make it far in the postseason. So I got the Avalanche in the West, and I got the Maple Leafs in the East. But I'm going to urge the message again that the NHL is full of parity, and that is nearly impossible to predict. And with that being said, I guess you just have to watch the season to find out. Thank you, Debanny.
No, thank you so much, TJ, for educating me on hockey. Do we just go?
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like. Do you want me to thank him for being on the show? Because, like, it's not written in, and it's, like, weird. Okay.
Yeah, that was.
No, you're good. I was like, wait.
So start from where you're going to thank her, and then we'll start from there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2.
And thank you, Debanny, for always having me on for NHL Talk on the Press Box.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you for educating me a little more on hockey. When we come back, we'll recap this sports. We'll recap the last week of Texas sports, and you won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Let's take a look at some of the headlines regarding Longhorn athletes. Texas soccer junior midfielder Lexi Massimo became the first student athlete in Texas soccer history to record a 15-goal, 15-assist season. Massimo scored her 15th and 16th goals of the season against UCF last Thursday.
Texas women's basketball was ranked number 1 in the 2023-2024 preseason poll. Texas earned 12 out of the 14 first-place votes. This comes off the heels of the Longhorns' Big 12 championship last season.
Texas women's golf's Farrah O'Keefe was named the Big 12 Women's Golfer of the Month, the first Longhorn woman honored since the 2019-2020 season.
Let's take a look at this week ahead in Longhorn sports. On Thursday, we have beach volleyball at TCU, soccer at Oklahoma at 7 p.m. on ESPN+. On Saturday, we have volleyball at Houston at 1 p.m. on ESPN+. And on Sunday, we have volleyball at Houston at 12 p.m. on ESPN and soccer at Houston at 2 p.m. on ESPN+.
And that'll wrap things up for this week's amazing episode of College Press Box. Make sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesday and One of Those Sports Show on Friday. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in the Master Control, our executive producer, Jason Conander, and everyone else at TSTV. I'm Ikey Kohler. She's Debanny Cerda. Thank you for joining us, and y'all have a good night.